My name is Amanda Phelps. We're at Perry Junior High School. Today is May 1st, 2009, and it's 3:50 p.m. Please state your full name and date of birth.
My name is Joseph A. Rositano. I was born August 29th, 1924.
What war were you in?
I served in World War II.
How did you first hear about the war?
World War II? Well, I was 17, a little over 17 at the time, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I was in a recreation area, and they announced over the public air, that the Japanese had just bombed Pearl Harbor, and that's when they had the first indication that we were going to war.
What was your reaction to it?
Of course, we were all shocked. The group that I was with was shocked that some other country had dared bomb the greatest nation in the world, and especially on a Sunday morning when everyone was going to church, and we just couldn't understand why they would do this. But then again, who can understand wars?
And were you drafted, or did you enlist?
No, I was drafted. My parents, I was helping support my parents at the time. Although I was just 17 years old, I was working, and eventually I did get drafted at the age of 18.
Did you want to go?
Yes, at that time, the whole country supported the president and the purpose of going to war against Japan, because of what Japan had done, and we were anxious to serve.
What was your branch of service?
I was eventually inducted into the United States Army Air Corps. Well, today, of course, it's the Air Forces. It was the U.S. Air Corps, which was part of the U.S. Army at the time. It wasn't two separate branches. It was all one.
What was your ranking?
I eventually attained the rank of Staff Sergeant.
Did you have to go through a lot of training for it?
All of us that were drafted went through basic training. The majority of the inductees were either farmers, youngsters that just got out of school, high school, factory workers, clerks, what have you. So we all had to go through what they call basic training to learn the fundamentals of the service.
Where did you do that?
I done my basic training at Camp Upton in New Jersey.
What were your general duties?
After basic training, we were shipped to Miami Beach, Florida. I don't think it was a paradise because the military, the Army, completely took over the Miami Beach area. And all the hotels, the luxury hotels, were taken over by the military. And this is where we were housed, in these hotels. But basic training was just like any other military camp. We marched in the streets, we done our calisthenics down in the beach, but it was strictly business. It wasn't a picnic.
Did you have combat service?
I served overseas. Yes, I had combat service of 2 years. 2 years combat service.
What battles were you in?
I was with the 15th Air Force, stationed in Italy, and we participated in the Battle of Europe. The Battle of Europe in the air. And I flew on bombing runs into Germany, into Austria, into France, all over Europe. I flew on a B-24 bomber, and I was a belly gunner. By being a belly gunner means the ball turret underneath the aircraft. That was the position that I was trained for. On my 7th mission, we were hit by enemy flak and enemy fighters, and our airplane caught fire, and eventually the aircraft exploded, and I was the only survivor out of the back end of the aircraft. I was blown out of the aircraft. Fortunately, I had just put my parachute on, and the next thing I found myself floating in the air and landed into enemy territory. I was captured.
Was that the time you were first under fire?
Oh no, I said that was my sixth
Oh,
mission, and we were under fire 1, 2, 3, 4 from the first mission on. Yeah, they was always under fire. Every day was a different battle.
How long were you with the enemy for?
I was in the Army for 2.5 years.
Was that when the Death March was?
Beg pardon?
Was that when the Death March was?
I was involved in the Death March. I presume you're referring to the Death March. There was 2 Death Marches. One was in Asia, the Pacific, and the second Death March was in Germany when when the Allies were gaining in Germany, winning the war. We were forced out of the prison camps, and we were forced on the so-called Death March. And that was in Germany. And the Death March in Germany, believe it or not, was worse than the Death March in the Pacific.
Yeah.
We lost more men. We were on the march for 82 days. Many died from starvation, dysentery, illnesses, you name it. So we who survived were lucky to survive.
Were you immediately captured when you had
Yeah, right after I bailed out of the aircraft, of course, by parachute, the civilians on the ground observed the parachute coming down. As soon as I landed in the fields, why, I was captured. And from there, I was taken to an interrogation center at Frankfurt on the Main in Germany, where I was interrogated. I spent 2 days at the interrogation center. And after the interrogation, they put us on trains. I say us, meaning there were many other captured Allied airmen, both American and British. They put us on trains and shipped us off to various prison camps, depending on what branch of service you were in and what rank you attained. Because the officers went to one particular camp, the Air Force men went to another different camp, the Air Force enlisted men once again went to a different camp, so we were all to different camps in Germany.
How long were you with the enemy before the march?
I was in the prison camp approximately 10 months before the march. And the march came about, I was imprisoned and turned in a little town called Stettin, which was up in the Baltics. This was northern Germany then, but originally it was Poland. And the Germans, of course, took over Poland, and now it's back to Polish territory. But it was in the Baltics, miles from nowhere, miles from anywhere. And we were sent on the march because the Russian armies were getting close to our camp. And one morning they got us up and says, we're moving out. At first, they threatened to kill all of us because we were just taking up too much of the enemy's men. You know, there were soldiers guarding us, but they wanted to use the soldiers for combat. So they didn't have to guard the prisoners. They would be sent to the front lines to fight the Russians. But the commandant of our prison camp, fortunately, was raised in Denver, Colorado, although he was a German. His people had moved back to Germany prior to Germany going to war with the United States. Of course, he was drafted into the Army, and him being an educated man, he became an officer, and he was the commandant of our prison camp. When the orders came through from the Nazi high regime, Hitler's, to eradicate the men, kill all the men, rather than force them to march, he refused. He refused, and consequently, we ended up on the march. Otherwise, many of us would have been annihilated.
Did anything happen to him because he didn't listen?
Yes, he disappeared. We don't know what happened to him, but he disappeared.
How long did the march last for?
We were on the march for 82 days. 82 days. We started out up in Stettin, up in the Baltics, and we ended up in southern Germany and Bavaria, a camp called Moosburg, which was way down in the Bavarians.
So basically, they just needed to move you from camp to camp, right?
I beg your pardon?
They just needed to move you from camp to camp.
No, when we left the primary prison camp, we were on the march, and the only place we were staying were cow barns out in the open fields, whatever. And we would scrounge for food wherever we could. Say, whatever we could eat, grab to eat. Some of the civilians, the German civilians, did hand us out food. But you got to remember that we were 12,000 prisoners on the march. 12,000. We were even strafed by our own Air Force, because they didn't know, from the up in the air, we looked like another German bunch of troops marching, so they did come down and strafe us. But once they recognized who we were, of course, they left us alone. After that first strafing, the German commandant, the soldier who was in charge of the soldiers, he allowed us to have a American flag. So whenever we were on the march, we did have the flag when we stopped to rest. We would lay out the flag on the ground. But we were strafed by our own aircraft, and we lost a few men that way too.
Were there any doctors or anything with you?
We had one British doctor for about 10,000 men. That was it. We did have a few medics, Army medics, but that was about it. Medication, there wasn't any. Bandages, there wasn't any. We used strips of cloth or whatever we could to try to cover our wounds and what have you.
There's probably a lot of illness and injury.
Oh yeah, a lot of illness, a lot of infections. You get a small cut and you become infected because there was no antibiotics at that time. That's it. And of course, food was a precious thing. While in the barracks, our barracks were divided into, one barrack was divided into 10 rooms, and each room had 10 men. And the primary source of food was boiled potatoes, rutabagas, which are turnips, and a loaf of bread for 10 men per day. That was it. It amounted to about 500, 600 calories a day. That was it.
Did you have any friends who were with you?
Yes, it's quite a story that was in the Reader's Digest, believe it or not. Well, after I was interrogated, the Frankfurt on the Main, while they were taking us to the trains to transport us to the prison camps, there was an air raid. The American bombers were bombing Frankfurt. So the German guards told us to scatter, scoot, and I dove into a culvert that ran under the road on one end, and this other fella dove in from the other side. So we were laying there in the culvert face to face, and I have the story right here, the Reader's Digest. And anyway, I looked at him and I says hi, and he said hi, and I introduced myself. I says, I'm Joe. He said, well, I'm Tony. And he asked me, he says, where are you from? I said, oh, a little old town in upstate New York. He says, whereabouts? He says, I'm from upstate New York too. I said, well, I'm from Utica. And he says, by golly, he says, I'm from Utica too. And once again, he said, my name is Tomaselli. And I said, my name is Rositano. He says, are you married? I said, no, are you? He says, no. And he says, you got a girlfriend? I said, yes, I do. I have a girlfriend that I went to high school with. And he says, me too. I got a girlfriend. He asked me, he says, where's your girlfriend live? He says, East Utica. And he says, gee, he says, my girlfriend lives in East Utica too. I, really? Yeah, where? He says, well, he says, on Wetmore Street. I says, gee, Tony, he says, my girlfriend lives on Wetmore Street. Now, Wetmore Street is just, there's only 3 blocks long. He says, whereabouts? He says, the 500 block. I says, my girlfriend lives in the 500 block. What address? I says, my girlfriend lives at 520 Wetmore Street. He said, wow. He said, my girlfriend lives at 515 Wetmore Street.
Whoa.
So for a while there, we thought we were going out with the same girl, you know, and it was quite a thing. And as I said, the story they make the Reader's Digest, and I have a copy of it here. It was quite a story.
Yeah.
What was daily life like when you were in the camps?
The routine was basically the same day in and day out. We were housed in 10 different barracks, 10 rooms, 10 men to the rooms, so there's 100 men per barrack. They'd wake us up at approximately 7 o'clock. We'd have roll call, and we would have so-called breakfast, which consisted of either mint tea, which was mint that was grown wild, or what we called Earth's coffee, which was made from acorns. That was our breakfast. Noon, we might have had a potato and a rutabaga. The evening, same thing. Once in a while, we'd have some kind of a vegetable, or turnips, or what have you. But this was day in and day out, day in and day out.
Never any meat or bread?
The bread was, once again, made with black bread. I know there was sawdust in it, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one loaf for, you know, for 10 men.
How did they treat you while you were?
Well, the Air Force, German Air Force personnel guarded American Air Force or Allied Air Force personnel. German infantry guarded American infantry prisoners, and so forth. The Air Force was more or less an elite organization, and the German flyers realized what we were going through when we were flying combat up in the air, in the skies. So, all in all, you know, you're the enemy. You're the enemy. They treated us fairly good, fairly good. Yeah. They didn't love us. They treated us humanely. Yeah.
Was it all Americans at the camp?
No, in our camp, we had British and Canadians, and a few Polish military aviators.
Did you become friends with anyone from other
Oh yeah,
countries?
we were all friends. We were all friends.
How did they communicate? Were they allowed to communicate?
Oh, were you allowed to communicate?
Amongst the prisoners? you mean?
Or
Yeah, we could communicate amongst each other, but we had 4 compounds. We could not communicate with, say, compound A or compound B. Just with the men within our compound, we could communicate. Of course, the camp is surrounded by barbed wire, and then besides the barbed wire, then I had another wire, what they call the warning line, which was about 20 feet from the barbed wire. And it was surrounded by guard towers. And if you dare step across that warning wire, you were shot without question, without warning or nothing. And that's why they call it the warning line. Even if you reached over to grab something, you were gone, because they had orders to shoot. That was it. That was it.
Did they treat everyone the same pretty much? Or?
Pretty much the same, yes. You asked me earlier about a memorable thing that I had in my mind. The memorable thing I had was that when I was in the aircraft flying over the enemy territory, and just before our plane was hit, I could hear angels singing. Now you may think this is, you know, funny, but it's not. I heard angels singing, and the song they were singing was "Coming Forward and Carry You Home." And shortly thereafter, our plane exploded. I found myself floating in the air. But that was impressive. And you say, is there a God? Yes, there is a God. Yes, there is. You have to believe.
Was it faith? Like, did your faith really help you through your very
Absolutely.
difficult time?
Absolutely. Faith had everything. Without faith, there's nothing. Without faith, there's nothing. That's what kept us going. that was kept the stroke.
Were you able to communicate with people at home when you were in the prison camp?
We were supposed to be able to communicate with people at home, and I did write several letters, but none of them were ever received at home. Whatever happened to them, I don't know. I think everything in Germany at the time, especially towards the end of the war, was for the German homeland, because they were being starved themselves. They had very little food. Their towns were shambles. Every major city in Germany was practically demolished, from the Allied raids. So they suffered too. They suffered too.
Do you have any closing thoughts just about the service in general? Or?
Well, I wish that the Americans, we're at war now in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and I know the American people support our troops, and they should support our troops as much as they supported us in World War II. That's what I wish for, that continue supporting the troops, regardless of politics, regardless of politicians. Support the troops. That's what I say. Here it is. This also appeared in the POW bulletin, but this is the story here.
That's funny.
That's cool. That's neat.
So what happened when the march was over? Did they come and liberate you?
Yeah, after the march was over, we were in Moosburg for approximately a month, maybe less than that. And at that time, General Patton's 4th Armored Division was coming through on Germany, and we were actually liberated by General Patton's 4th Armored Division. That was on, I'm trying to think of the date, April, I believe it was April 29th, 1945.
How long was that after the march had ended? Not long.
Oh, not long, about, I would say 10 days maybe.
So did you go back to battle after that?
No, when we were being liberated, there were skirmishes still going on around us, around the prison camp, because there were many Germans who were diehards. They just wouldn't give up, snipers and what have you. And while we were waiting for airplanes to take us over to France, back to France, I was once again shot by a sniper's bullet. And from that point, they took me into a field hospital, and I have pictures of me in the field hospital here. And I spent about 10 days in the field hospital, and from there I was transferred to another hospital in France, and from there we were transported by boat, by ship, the USS Washington, from Cherbourg, France, to New York City. And I ended up in the hospital on Staten Island in New York City. And then another hospital up at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And from Fort Devens, Massachusetts, I was finally discharged.
Had you been able to keep in touch with people at home throughout the whole thing?
Not too many, because most of the friends that I had on the aircraft died. They were killed in the aircraft. But I did receive a call one day from a Mrs. Ussery, who was in Salt Lake City, and her son was in my aircraft, one of the survivors.
Did Did you receive any medals?
Yes, I've got some medals.
And when you got home, did you go back to work or to school?
Well, I was quite a while recuperating, but after my discharge, fortunately, I didn't go back to school, which I'm very, very sorry for. Of course, you know, Monday quarterbacking is another thing, and I'm very sorry I did not go back to school. I went to night school. I was self-educated, no more or less, and I did receive my GED, and I went to work for the city of Utica in the fire department. Through studying, I attained the rank of deputy fire chief.
How old were you at that point when you were discharged?
23 when I went into the fire service.
What is the funniest thing you remember from?
Well, really the funniest thing that I can recall from the service was this incident with
Yeah.
meeting Tony Thomas Sully. Incidentally, he became my best man at my wedding.
What experience left the greatest impression on you?
I beg pardon?
What experience left the greatest impression on you?
What experience left the greatest impression? I don't understand how I can answer that. I love the service. I wouldn't take $1 million for what I went through. But I won't take $1 million to do it again.